very special guests here. There was going to be three of us. Ebru bailed on us the last minute. She's rehearsing and she was going to lecture today, so she couldn't make it. But we say hi to her from here. So Louna is here and Esra is here. So gender is a very complicated concept. So I've been teaching gender for over 20 years now, and every year I have to go back and go over my notes. Because even the terminology changes. So the terminology we used 10 years ago is not applicable now. And if you use those words, like you're accused of being, either politically too correct or, like phobic of something. So we have to really go back and look into what we call gender balance and how we define it. So that will be the first question, like how do we define gender balance? Because like now it's the trendy topic, right? All the companies I work with try to create some kind of gender balance within their system. But usually this doesn't go beyond headcount. So we have equal number of men and women on the boards, or we have, equal pay, but they don't go beyond this. So we'll be talking about all that and how when we talk about gender balance, usually we talk about some kind of binary system. So very few systems also challenge binary approach to gender. So I want to begin with Louna. She flew out from Berlin and she's as sleepy as I am, but we'll make it. So how do you define gender balance and how is your approach to gender balance? And what do you see, where do you see the challenges?
First of all, thank you for the invitation, Murat and Chal. I'm really happy to be here. Sleepy indeed, because I just arrived this morning. So bear with me, please. So gender balance, I feel, is definitely more complex. It shouldn't be, and it's. I mean, the binary is men and women, but the reality is different because gender to me is also just a construct, and it's something that men have created to kind of create more power to themselves and to, belittle any other that is not defined as male. At work, I mean, in a work context, I feel it's also more than just, okay, we have, half of them are female, half of them are male. What we forget is people who are gender non-conforming, people who are trans, who are queer, and people who don't want to define as anything in general. That representation is lacking almost completely. And then there's also the accessibility to career. So when we think about women at work, like how do you really construct or design their work around, for example, parenthood? Like when a woman leaves their job, it's really hard for them to come back into work. Same for anyone that's not male. And then there's also the question of ownership and allowance, and then like allowing a space, a workspace, to kind of express or evolve different gender identities or the lack thereof. So I think it shouldn't be complex. It should be more like anyone can be can have a space and can have a position that is deserved and not withheld just because they're not white cis male. So that's just my 2 cents.
So how do you see the ecosystem when we think about the arts ecosystem? Like, where do you see the problems? How inclusive is the arts ecosystem, arts and culture in general?
I mean, I live and work in Germany, and there is currently a discourse, or like something that keeps happening over and over again. It's racism, sexism, transphobia, homophobia, and lack of respect towards people who don't want to identify as such or can't or are unwilling to do so. And those, specifically theaters, tend to be run by white cis males. So I think that's already a problem, a massive problem. One thing that's really sexy and trendy right now is the fact that they want to be more diverse. They want to be gender. They want to have different genders or gender non-conforming representation, but they only have it within freelance positions, if even. Or like they would, like an all-white institution would hire, for example, I don't know, a black curator to curate one festival on blackness, or like on the black struggle. But at the end of the day, the whole institution is white and it's run by white people. They want to be queer, so they hire queer curators or trans curators so that they can, you know, have them for half a year and then let go of them. But they're not represented in the team. And I feel that's the biggest issue. If you want to be inclusive, then you should have people from, like, who are from displacement background, people who are from working class background, or people who are members of the BIPOC communities, and also in reasonable positions, in management positions with decision-making possibilities. And I feel you can't preach to be inclusive if you don't reflect it in your team. Yeah.
No, that's a very, very good point, because, like, yes, we're trying to save the appearances. That's what we do when it comes to, you know, sustainability as well. We talked about greenwashing and everything. In the previous panel, yes, like you know, have these wonderful pictures. You have queer curators, as you said, but when it comes to managerial positions, there's no diversity. Also, I have a student, I've never thought of this. He said, when I wanted to audition for a play, I was asked to play the male part, and he didn't want to. He wanted to play the female part in audition, but he was met with a lot of reaction. He said, like, what on earth, you know, really, you know, this institution claims to be very inclusive, but I don't want to, you know, play the male part. So they were reactionary. So he said this is one of the challenges as well, something which I never thought about before. So we'll come back to you with all your work with Oyoun. I love the name because we have, you know, in Turkish it also means game. We'll come back to that. So now I want to turn to Esra. So where do you see the problems in Turkey and UK? So you're very knowledgeable, you know, in both, you know, you're very knowledgeable in both ecosystems. So where do you see gender balance, gender equality, the challenges in Turkey versus UK? Do we have similar challenges or do they differ in any ways?
Oh.
It's a big question, sorry.
Question.
We'll help out, we'll help out.
Okay, let me start by stating that I'm neither a UK expert nor a gender equality expert yet. I'm honored to be working in the cultural sector for the last 20 years in Turkey, and for the last 7 years, I've been directing the arts programming of British Council in Turkey, which means I'm creating programs in collaboration with cultural institutions and cultural professionals from Turkey and UK. So this will be a very, I think, personal sharing. It's been really weird. I mean, first of all, like, how would a gender equal society, or how would a gender equal sector would be? I thought one reason I found myself in this creative sectors, although I've always been in the management side, I'm doing the boring stuff. I'm curating only for the last 2 or 3 years, perhaps. I've always felt that I was acting in an egalitarian system. I'm an unmarried single woman who doesn't have kids. This brings with it lots of definitions. And I've always felt agitated when meeting with new people, how you start by identifying yourself. Now the new generation are, you know, accusing of us in a way with our cis or, you know, cis woman, binary woman approach. But in my day, I was non-queer. I'm so disappointed by being non-queer. I'm talking about this a lot because I feel like I have to be this boring, outdated personality. However, I've been an activist for the last 20 years by trying to make my family accept me as with my profession and with my marital status. in the society and by not having kids. So although I thought I've been this alternative, marginal, very activist personality, I ended up being in my mid-age, finding out that I'm ending up by being this really outdated cis woman personality. So it's a disappointment on my side. But I must admit that although I always say that my professional life is also my private life. It has always been like that. My professional colleagues have been my closest friends. It has never been a 9-to-6 job. I'm sure it's never been for you. You know, in civil society, in creative sectors, you're here because you feel life has a meaning here. You know, you feel you're putting up something plus in life, or you identify yourself here. And I always thought we were gender equal. However, my awakening has happened in a way with a report we did back in 2016. We started to work on it, woman power in culture. You know, it could be a cliche name, but why not? So we looked at the creative sectors in Turkey. It was a very small research, talking to perhaps at most 350 women and men. Yes, exactly. So we did some one-to-one meetings, roundtable meetings, and open-ended survey. So it turned out that everybody complained about a gender unequal sector. In a way, like the job satisfaction of the women in the sector are like 90%. Everybody's here because they want to be here, or else why would they be here? I mean, 60% have to rely on their family for income. No one can survive in the sector. I'm sure it hasn't changed. So it's lots of commitment. It's lots of private life mixing with professional life. And everybody thought the sector is run by the founding fathers, as I respectfully call them. I love them all deeply with my heart. However, I realized with the research that what the problem was. Although you know, my status in my sector was as good as it gets, if you can say it, define it that way, I kept feeling like a girl child, if I might say, right? I've always thought it was because I didn't have kids, I was unmarried, I wasn't taken seriously, but it turns out I'm treated as a young girl who struggles in the sector by these founding fathers for the last 20 years. You know, I'm here, I'm working, I've changed many institutions, it never changed. So it's like, there's something wrong here. Why do I feel that I'm a small child in the sector? I'm already middle-aged, you know? So it turns out it's really an awakening, because I realized, talking with lots of my colleagues, we've been struggling with this sustainability of the sector for so long. We've been activating for funds, we've been activating for professional rights. We never thought to showcase ourselves, if I may say. We always felt we had to be invisible. I see that it's been so wrong now. We've always been behind the scenes. We've never acknowledged ourselves with our gender identity, because most of the people, probably like me, felt ashamed that they were cis women, and they didn't need to do any activism for that. And I must admit, when we first started in the sector, civil society and the art scene was not so intervened, you know. We felt like we were holding separate grounds. So although, I mean, at least maybe I shouldn't say we, but I felt proud that there were so many women NGOs activating, or LGBTI NGOs activating. I never thought that I could have an input there, because, you know, I had to struggle for the sector itself. But now I feel that, and also with that experience of the Women of the World Festival, we have to speak more about our gender. It was kind of like maybe we were, I don't want to terrified by saying we were being mocked, not mocked, what?
Belittled?
Yeah, I mean belittled, yeah. Belittled to disregard our gender, which was a big issue, and we didn't acknowledge it, but I see that now the younger generation, the queer generation, is really cool about it, and I admire them for this. I love it. I love it. I envy them.
I get you. We're on the same boat, so we'll have a chat. So I'll come back to you with the WOW Festival. We'll talk about this. So I want to talk about the Oyun experience because I was going through all your work, and I must say I found it very, very impressive. You have these like Dare to series, which are wonderful. You have stuff about remembrance. The memories, the body holds, I thought this is as inclusive as it gets, like you're really including everyone. There was like neurodiversity even. I love the concept because that's a concept I never used before, although I'm very sensitive towards, mental challenges and everything. So I want to talk about that, like how come you came up with all these ideas? How did it all begin? How did it evolve into what it is today?
Thank you. Oyun was launched in January last year. Before that, we had a space called BCF in Wedding, which is a anti-cafe, so like a anti-capitalist approach to
anti-cafe.
Anti-cafe. So people would come in there, and it was an old casino. Like the initial idea was, Murat knows because I used to have a music agency that he worked at 10 years ago. Murat? Oh, he's talking. He's not even listening.
He was here. There he is.
Yeah. Hi. I'm just talking about Tunesisters briefly. So I met Murat 10 years ago.
You have to sit up here.
And I had like this office, co-working space, and then I left to move somewhere else, and I worked in Lebanon and Jordan, then moved back to Berlin in 2015, and was looking for a co-working space where I didn't feel like I'm the only African or like the only non-white person or like person of color. And there was no space where I felt comfortable. So at some point, like a really strange idea, I drive by this casino in Wedding. I'm like, it's empty. Let's make a co-working space out of it for specifically designed for members of marginalized communities. And then we had that. It was super successful for 3 years. Or 4 years almost now, and it was basically you go in, everything was vegan, vegetarian, you would pay only for the time that you spend there, because time is like the equal currency to anyone. Like you can have more money, you can have less money, but you have the same amount of time, at least when you're alive. So we used time as a currency, and that was a concept that worked out. I think it was possible in Berlin. I'm not sure if it would have been possible in other places. But then we started having events in the evening, and we had, like, for example, a queer Muslim festival, like a queer Muslim Ramadan festival, where we had drag shows with all Muslim members, and during Ramadan, yeah.
So did you meet any reaction? Like, it's very provoking, right? During Ramadan, like drag.
Yeah, so Wedding is in a working class neighborhood. So everyone around us was from Muslim communities or like Balkan communities. And one night when the drag show happened, my mom and my brother were over. And we lived above the cafe. So I was really, really nervous that they would see what's happening downstairs. And at some point they're like, okay, we want to sit in the cafe for coffee. I'm like, no, stay home, let's watch a movie, let's not go downstairs. And then I went up because I know they would come at like 6 p.m. And I didn't want to be in that situation with my mom and my brother explaining, like, during Ramadan, why would we have a drag show party? And then at some point, my mom called me and she says, okay, Louna, there's something happening. I don't know, man, woman, I don't know what's happening, but there are more and more coming. You should come and talk to them. I'm like, Mom, so there's an event happening tonight, and they're all Muslim refugees. And she's like, really? Because they also speak Arabic, and they're really happy, and like, what's happening? And then I went downstairs to talk to her, and I explained to her that these are drag people, and that of course they can be happy because that's their way to fulfill their identity, and to kind of also cope with the trauma they've inherited and all of that. And at some point I was like, okay, let's go home. And she's like, no, I'm really enjoying this. She was the last person at the party. So this was I think a perfect example of how, like, you can kind of break stereotypes by code and action with people who you have similarities with. You know, they were all Muslim. My mom is Muslim. They were Arabic speaking, which was shocking to her. They're like, okay, you know, it was a culture shock, but it turned into something really beautiful. She took a bunch of pictures. She went and danced with them. She was like really hard to get off this party, and I think this is one incident that shows how we can kind of break that gap or like barrier between us. And it comes to also when it comes to in general people who might feel. For example, I have a friend who wears a hijab, and I never came out to her because I felt like, okay, it's going to be awkward. But it's not her problem; it was my problem. And I feel it's the same way for people who might feel, okay, because I'm not queer, or because I'm not this, or because I'm that, I can't be included unless you're a cis white man. It doesn't really apply, you know, because
cis white man never included though.
No,
right?
no.
So it's
But then Oyoun came about because Keşif became too small for events. Like we had events with 200 people standing outside, and then we found this public tender. We're like, okay, great, massive space. What to do with it? It was 4,000 square meters on 7 levels, and we turned it into like a bigger Keşif. And we say Oyoun is an antidisciplinary epicenter centering queer, feminist, and decolonial, as well as neurodiverse and class-critical perspectives, but especially migrant perspectives as well. And like I mentioned earlier, the only way we can do it is because our team, everyone I hired so far, is a member of the queer, trans, or BIPOC community and is marginalized, and they are the only ones who can understand how it's like to be affected and how it's like to handle or work through or navigate through racism on a day-to-day basis. So if we want to talk about that work, we have to fill these positions with people that are directly affected. And I think that's what made it possible to also create these projects around and like curatorial focuses around.
It's a wonderful story with your mom too. Like that also shows, like we were talking about it in the previous panel, the transformative power of art too. Like, you know, when you include dance, so that really, really helps. You know, when we have art in place, like it really helps transform people and bring them together. So I want to turn to Esra now. She's hosting this wonderful, curating this wonderful event, Women of the World Festival, and the Turkey leg, right? You've been curating that. So, and it's a very inclusive event too. Like they're very diverse events, talks. You know, this year it was online, as far as I remember, right? Unfortunately. So, what is your experience with WOW? Like, has anything changed over the years? What kind of reactions do you get? How hard it is for you? What kind of challenges do you meet?
WOW is actually Women of the World Festival, originated in London, South Bank Centre. At the time, the artistic director of the centre, Jude Kelly, came up with the idea that we should be celebrating women's equality during the 100th year celebration of the suffragettes and the Equal Act. But she wanted to do it at an art centre, not only hosting artistic events, but opening the art center, which is actually known with its rigid, you know, forms to the society, including diverse communities like immigrants who would normally maybe not consider to step in this scary artistic institution, or like women with kids who would, you know, who wouldn't like to walk around caring about the babies, etc. All different identities into the art center and offered them a creative platform where they could really listen to some women or men they hadn't heard before. So it's not gender exclusive festival. It's an inclusive festival, really. So it's open to everyone who want to activate for the gender rights, for the gender equality, and it's hosting it as an arts institution with its creative platform, which actually, like Özlem in the previous panel was talking about how the storytelling changes our conception of our known facts or prejudices. Just like that, I thought I was questioning it at first. I thought it was very outdated in 2016 to do a festival called Woman of the World. You know what? We already have equality. We don't need anyone to activate for us. Then, of course, world turned upside down with Me Too movement, with everything happening in Turkey, with how the civil rights movement in Turkey, civil society, you know, we got all the blows one after another, how the LGBTI rights are now under attack, and everything happening with women's equality movement, going back, increasing conservatism. So we were like, oh my God, you know, because we agreed to do the festival in 2016, and now when it was the original date would be 2019. So it was totally a different world, different country, and I was always questioning, it would be so challenging, you know, when so many women are being killed because of their identities, and when, you know, we're discussing whether or not at the time Istanbul Convention would survive or not, you know, with Osman Kavala being imprisoned, with everything happening in Turkey. So how to celebrate our woman identity with the arts? That has been my main challenge. But of course, when I was talking to Jude Kelly, she said, find yourself an advisory board. And at first I thought, oh God, it would be so scary, you know. I'm not, as I said, I'm not coming from an academic background. So how to come up with this advisory board? And Jude Kelly said, no. Look at the people who are already in your circle, whom you trust, and who can carry you to different communities. So I just looked at the people, you know, I was talking at the time. So that was Özlem, Özlem Ece with her culture policy hat, but also with all the local municipalities, and of course her background on political science. And then I met a wonderful woman, feminist Muslim, Rumeysa. Before I would never think Muslim woman could identify herself as a feminist. Like, she brought me to totally different, a wonderful world, really mind-opening. And Ülker, she came to one of the pre-thinkings. She's coming from the Boğaziçi Gösteri Sanatları Topluluğu. And of course, Kardeş Türküler. I've known them for years, but we never met. And she came up with totally a different word to me, saying, did you read this article? Did you know these discussions? Are you aware that you cannot speak like this, Esra? Don't use that word, please. I'm like, oh my God, it's so scary, really. It's so scary, you know, to say something wrong. And as you said, the terminology has changed so much. And of course, Asena, Günal of Anadolu Kültür, and İpek Bozkurt of the We Will Stop the Women's Femicide platform. So we've been an interesting bunch. I still remember the first meeting. I thought, you know, they were all my friends. It will be cool. And everybody was speaking something else. You know, we were so shocked. Everybody's like, you don't think like this? You don't know? You know, but it was nice. It was really reviving. We saw how many different perceptions could exist. And really, there is something called solidarity. Thank you. And of course, we came together with the beautiful Positive Productions. I grew up with Positive, both İKASA and Positive. So, yeah, Elif Cemal. Of course, we went to see the Wow London together, and Ayşegül became our senior producer. So I surrounded myself with all these wonderful women who supported me, scolded me, got angry with me, advised me. So I think we ended up with the best we could do. We met you. We came together with so many different voices. And at the end, you know, when even it was on the digital, when I was listening to the story of a house worker, you know, in our cleaning ladies, we all grow up. You never think about them. They exist in another planet. We heard some wonderful women talking about their rights as cleaning ladies, you know. about being insured or not being insured, their problems with their husbands. So many beautiful souls, and I think this is what we need. I mean, this is why arts is so powerful. It brings you together with these beautiful souls and voices, just like your mother. I mean, it's just, she sees everybody. We all see each other from a different perspective, thanks to a music we love, thanks to a speaker we adore. And I really love the creative platform it provides, and hopefully this year, I pray to God, though I'm an atheist, I still pray to some place up there that we'll be able to do it face to face. Yeah.
So that's a wonderful story, you know, the advisory board coming together. But that's wonderful because, you know, all the ideas clash and finally we come up with, you know, new ideas. We learn from each other and we inspire each other. That's wonderful. And the story you talked about, the woman who come clean our houses, we had a very interesting experience during one of my graduate courses. So we were talking about gender and language and we were coming up with examples, right? And one of my students said, you know, hocam, yeah, my mother's woman is a man. So I'm like, what does that mean? You know, annemin kadını erkekmiş dedi. So because like that job, that profession is called being a woman. So it's like, how much do you pay your woman? So the name of that job in Turkish, like although many of us are not using it anymore, but that was a tradition. So we were like, wow, this is something we never thought about. I thought about writing an article called, you know, My Mom's Woman Was a Man. So the level of, you know, sexism in language. So it's wonderful you brought it up. So I want to get to you about the self-care issue because I saw these wonderful posts, projects, you know, about self-care. I think it's extremely important, especially when we talk about marginalized communities, you know, self-care. Just can you talk about that a little? And I'm sure it will set a good example for all of us in our institutions.
So there's a residency called the Lockdown Residency, and the outcome was, well, basically, so the day of the opening of Oyoun last year was also the first lockdown. It was 14th of March, so we were closed. Then we were able to open again around September, and we were like, okay, great. We had a festival, of course, a queer festival, migrant festival, in September, and we were able to host events on site. And then we're like, okay, great, let's get to the next one. We had Sura Film Festival, a queer Swana Film Festival. Then we were ready to do something in November, and then the next lockdown happened. And we've already been working with different artists who, of course, were massively affected by the lockdown, especially when you're queer and trans and black and brown. So we like out of nowhere, we're like, okay, shit, this lockdown is happening. Let's just send out a message to everyone we know and say, here you can immediately access a lockdown residency. You get money for the whole month. Do whatever you want. Just cover, like just make sure that you cover something that can be identified as self-care. Do something for yourself for this month of November, and that's it. We didn't give them any framework, whether offline, online. We just asked them, what does self-care mean to you? And what they created was completely mind-blowing. That was their creation. And the outcome was then published as part of like exhibition, an online exhibition. Some people had video recorded them in the shower, like to show their morning rituals or routines that mean self-care to them. One very striking one was Waf in Tunisia, who was exiled in her own country. She actually was based in Tunisia and then decided to, she was based in Berlin, decided to visit someone in Tunisia, then couldn't go back to Berlin, and that has affected her mental health drastically. So she created a video where she kind of shares the impact of this patriarchal system, but also the impact of like toxic sexism within the communities, but also from her mother, from her aunt, like people saying you don't look feminine enough. You should let your hair grow, straighten your curls, and all of that. And then in the video, she shaved her head completely, and that was very liberating for her. And then she also did a podcast because she wanted to let people know about the importance of taking care of yourself and the mental health, especially when you're intersectionally discriminated and when you go through different questions on a regular basis. So self-care or mental health is something that we just recently, thankfully, started being more vocal about, where I feel we can be even more vocal about is vulnerability and mental health among cis men, or among men in general. And I feel that could be like a healing process for all this toxic masculinity that's around us, if we were just able to be more vulnerable and to be more in touch with our feminine part and masculine parts or non-parts. And yeah.
So that I found very striking, actually, especially during the pandemic. You know, you brought this issue up. Do I take care of myself enough, and in what ways? And other people really, you know, like being role models for each other. Thank you. So that was really inspiring for me. And I would suggest everyone to go, check out the Oyoun website, and you'll see the exhibits as well. So Esra, we also want to talk about your show, your radio show you hosted, Festivali'nin.
Sounds fancy when you say that.
But it is, it's true. You've been hosting the show, and it's, like you have a very diverse, interdisciplinary approach to the issue, from the legal aspect to the artistic to the political. So how is the experience with that? So you finalized it, right?
Yes, it's over.
It's over.
Açık Radio kicked me out. No,
you were too diverse, or you were cis. Like, I don't know which one went.
I think it's about cis. No. Actually, it was just before the pandemic started. So at first, I had to convince my country director from UK that I could host a show, actually, and speak about gender equality. I mean, I'm making a joke, of course, but it was about this idea of bringing women from a creative sector with that of a civil society or an academician, because usually, we're used to working together or staying in our own communities. And the whole point about WOW has been that women as creative professionals or artists have so much power. They have the power to create a big impact exactly with that storytelling or with that artistic quality to impact the bigger society. Just like, what we've seen in Turkey, like Sıla was abused by her partner, a very famous musician, pop musician. So all the case grew really big in the media. We have Susma Bitsin Collective, who are really following up the cases of woman killings or domestic abuse, or the professional abuse in the TV, theater and media sectors. So what if we bring the women together? It was kind of scary because it was reaching out to different communities, bringing them together. But at the end, the experience was that everybody was happy to be conversing with someone else, someone they hadn't talked to before, like a lawyer who's used to, fighting with the judges in the courts, speaking with a musician, or, these could sound cliche, but it really never happens. I mean, we look at life sometimes from different perspectives, so it really created like just very short, half an hour. And of course, because of the pandemic, we couldn't get together, so it was like recording from home, everybody's kids, cats jumping around, bells ringing. But Açık Radio is a beautiful platform. I really value their trust to the, civil society. So it's been a great pre-experience before the festival, talking to women and hearing out what the approaches are.
Thank you, and they're all available. So if you want to check
the
on
podcasts.
Podcasts are all available. We'll have a final round and then I'll open it up to questions. So what's the future? What does it look like? Future plans? And also how we as a community, you know, here we're together, like different minds, different approaches, different experiences. How we can all help out with your efforts? That's never thought about, but it will come.
Help out with the efforts. What exactly do you mean?
So what are you planning to do in the future with Oyoun, and how like this community here, the artistic, you know, civil society, academic community, can help out with your efforts?
So Oyoun is probably going to be running for a few more years. It's a state-owned building, and we would probably get more funding for the next few years. So what we're trying to do is bring in different perspectives that are important to discuss. We have curatorial focuses that are not limited physically. So we have a physical space, but we also have a virtual space, a Topia world, where festivals happen. So anyone in the whole world can access it. And can see concerts, can see films. It's like a fusion festival on a map, and it's an Afrofuturistic theme. When it comes specifically to collaborations with Turkey, there's one thing that we're currently looking into: Black Turkish folks. That's a research we are currently talking to someone. We're currently talking to someone about. Maybe researching that and then seeing what the outcome may be. Because we want to be anti-disciplinary, meaning we are not the space where you can just have a concert and then people go consume and leave, but rather like a more sustainable impact. So it's a bit more than that. We would ask questions artistically to be responded without a specific discipline. So we're anything that's queer, decolonial, migrant, critical, political, inclusive for sure. Yeah. I mean, we are also a learning institution. We are not perfect, and our language is not perfect, and there are always people who are excluded. And what we're trying to do is to see how we can include them even further. And intersectionality really matters. So if you have someone who's from a displacement background and trans, then they definitely deserve the space, you know. And that is not limited to Berlin, but rather a global issue. So whenever someone has a project in mind and you want to collaborate, we're completely open.
Thank you. We'll definitely will. And I have a few friends, like Black Turkish friends, you know, so I'll introduce them to you. So how about you? Like, what does the future hold for you or for your institution and for the festival? Any new projects coming up?
Well, we've just started to work on the second edition of Face to Face Wow. There's another, I think, challenging road with the Istanbul Convention being annulled. So I think we'll focus on the optimistic side of solidarity. I liked when you said creating the utopia space, kind of. And I think my mission this year will be to create more impact into this understanding that sometimes in Turkey, you know, when you work on climate, when you work on civil society, or when you work for gender equality, you're treated as if it's a minority work, huh? It's a marginal community or the arts itself. So we have to understand that this word is so hard to pronounce, both in Turkish and English, intersectionality. But it's like it all affects each other. Again, if we don't have the media rights, if we don't have the civil society rights, we won't have the women rights, or we won't have the LGBTI rights, or the climate justice won't happen. So I think whatever we do, this time I'll try to make myself more clear, or institutionally too, to try to create more impact, that every work matters, you know. As the climate group said, we have to keep on being optimistic, but you know, we have our voices and voices are being heard. I think it still counts. So keep on working.
Definitely. Thank you so much. So now I want to open the floor for questions. Any questions, comments? Türkçe de olabilir, çeviririz. Any questions, comments?
Hello. First of all, thank you very much. It was incredible to listen to you all. The story about what you had with your mom, with Oyoun, was amazing because, like, I believe there is a huge difference in between generations. Because, like, I've been having this fight with my parents over years. My mom was here, but I don't know, she left. So actually, I was wondering, like, do you have any opinions about, like, including maybe older people to those? I mean, I know because, like, there's a lot going on and there is an increase of awareness, but still, I feel like it's between in my generation. So I don't know if there are some works about that, or what's your opinion?
My mom is here too, and she's joined the Pride Parade for many years with us. But now we don't have a Pride Parade, so we're hoping it will come back. It's wonderful to include them. I definitely agree. So, you already have a mic.
So the space that Oyoun is now used to be something else before for 27 years, and the deal that we had with the government is that we inherit the team. And the team's average age that we hired is 63. So we already have people in the team that are of an older generation. It is challenging, but also very rewarding because that allows us to double check our accessible language or the lack of accessible language. And I mean, what we've done with the people in the team is we've done workshops on intersectionality, on like team building workshops to build trust, because the new team is like pretty young and it's like super vogue, and there is a gap, but I think it takes patience sometimes and just regularly exposing them to certain events and then having an open discussion about it, allowing the space for questions, even and acknowledging or ensuring that there's no stupid question. I guess.
Do you want to add? I mean, WOW is a festival, so it's cross-generational. Their motto is from 7 to 70. But yeah, it was a little vague on the digital, I believe. But we try to be as inclusive and as diverse as possible in terms of our speakers. But yeah, it's a relevant point. Yeah.
Hi. First of all, thank you so much for this panel. I truly enjoyed it. Thank you so much. And my question is about when Esra was talking about like when Road of Women, yes, yeah, WOW was coming up, like the conditions of especially Turkey. And my question is about like more Turkey related. So I see Turkey as being on an edge of a queer revolution, and I hope to believe that, and I want to see that as an openly queer person, and relate to. Okay, so my question is about that, and like especially during the protests about the Istanbul Convention and how Turkey is resigning from it. During those protests, I always saw, and I was there with a queer flag. And like queer people are always like in the history leading these movements and like being in the front lines of the protests. And when I was doing that, like when I was there, like protesting with women and with queer people, I got comments and I heard people saying that like the movements, like these two movements should be separate, because that is, and like when I first heard that, I was like maybe, because I wasn't holding the queer flag with like trying to make a statement. I was there, and that is my identity. And when I heard that, and I couldn't find an answer to it, because it is logical to have emphasis on like important topics separately, but it is also when there is a movement and when we're both oppressed and we both have struggles like legally and about human rights, we should protest it together. So I just wanted to ask your opinion on that, on the separation of those movements, if we should do it or not. Thank you so much.
It's a big discussion point because the more I met with different communities, different people, of course, this is a very relevant. Some women communities do not accept cis men into their collectives, but they, for example, accept trans women, they accept queer identities. But then when you start, I mean, this is my personal point, when you start really separating or diversifying people with their different gender identities, we become, I feel like, more fragmented. First of all, Istanbul Convention does have the clause on gender equality, so it's not only a convention, a treaty about women's rights, it's a gender equality rights, and this is why it is annulled, by the way. It's about that definition of not fragmenting the identities, and another reason is that household definition. It doesn't identify women who see femicide or abuse because of their marital status, but as long as she is in a domestic household, she has the rights. Although I'm not unmarried, I have the right to defend myself from the man who abuses me, etc. So yeah, I mean, lots of different approaches, lots of different discussions, but what I see reviving is, yes, queer revolution. I totally agree. Even before everything happened, you know, just before the pandemic, I was in Beyoğlu and I was thinking how we let the streets go off our hands after Gezi Park protests, and we left. We were scared with the terrorist attacks, and how I've seen the queer people rejoicing Beyoğlu with new venues, with new entertainment life, with new locations, and they were so fearless, and I was like, oh my God, it's coming back, you know? When we feel that solidarity, but I also feel that queer communities, I mean, we have to find maybe a different definition, I don't know. You come up with it. We have to include everyone. It has to be a state of mind, not a state of body, where we have to evolve into that understanding, because I totally believe it's a civil rights movement, it's a human rights movement. Yeah, we have to be protesting together.
Do you want to add
I mean, it's we did have events at BCF back then with Ceren and another person from Turkey, and they did touch upon that, but I'm not really aware of it, so I'm not sure if I can respond to it. Sorry.
Başka, any more questions, comments? Yeah, that's a very critical issue, like, because it's all about exclusion, right? We're trying to exclude each other somehow, like, you don't belong here. In my university, we have, I think, 4 gender-related clubs because they can't work together. So the Rainbow Club doesn't want these people, and they don't want trans people. Trans people don't want, you know. So, but why? Like, why fragmenting it into 4 parts, right? We're already, like, marginalized and challenged, but then even among ourselves, if, you know, we're fragmented and fragmented again, I think that really doesn't help the struggle. That's how I see it. We have to be as inclusive as we can be, I think. So, başka soru, yorum, any questions, comments? Okay, so thank you so much. Thank you. This was wonderful being with you both, and we'll keep up the fight. Okay, çok teşekkür ederiz.